What up, Wizards? It's Deb from The Place, and today we had a big old day of Magic news to kick off Magicon Atlanta, man. Wizards gave us the entire 2026 release schedule. That includes a lot of little tidbits, man. Big old Universes Beyond reveals I think a lot of people will be happy about. Some new product lines are going to try out, and maybe most importantly, 10 brand new cards and a bunch of other information on Lorwyn Eclipsed. We're going to do it all, man. We're going to review them cards, talk about them sets, but that is a lot to get to, so let's not waste any more time. Now let's go to Lorwyn Eclipsed first, because not only is that the set that I'm most excited about next year, I cannot wait to go back to Lorwyn, but also it was the first set that they talked about of the 7 sets that are going to release next year. Yeah, that's the first big piece of news from today, is that, you know, there used to be 4 sets every year. That was kind of fine. We went to 6 sets a year and everyone started complaining about product fatigue. Next year, 7 sets. I don't know how we're going to handle it, but apparently it's happening. I could do a whole extra video about that. There's a lot of other information to get to in this one. 7 sets. And if that weren't enough, the second big piece of news that we got today, right after they got us all hyped up for Lorwyn talk, is that MSRP is going up on a couple of products. You want to buy a collector booster? Well, it used to be $24. Now it's going to be like $27. So that went up a few bucks. And if you want a commander deck, well, that used to be $45. Now it's $50. So that went up a few bucks. I understand the commander decks being $50. I guess, but at the same time, I think a lot of people are going to take this as the worst announcement of the day, you know, even worse than the 7 freaking sets next year. MSRP going up right now again is kind of ridiculous, but again, I could do a whole extra video about that, and I don't want to be negative the entire video, and as a matter of fact, I don't really think there's too much more to be negative about from today's announcement, so I wanted to get the 2 things that people are going to be like, about out of the way to start things, because I know people are going to be about them, but there's a lot to be about today, so let's get to that. Man, I have mastered the English language. I guess if there is a third thing that people are going to be whatever noise I made to signify being disappointed about, then it might be the fact that there are theme decks in this set. And that's not the disappointing thing, I think, and I think a lot of people think. Theme decks are a good idea generally. These are going to be standard legal decks that release alongside Lorwyn Eclipsed as part of the official product line. So these are 60-card, pre-constructed, standard legal decks with cards from all throughout standard, not just Lorwyn Eclipsed, that you can, buy and then tweak and take up to your F&M. I think that this is a good addition to the line. We haven't had decks like this in a good long time. So again, I think that this is good. I just think that they kind of messed up with what themes they're using exactly. Okay, so we're going back to Lorwyn, and that's when these theme decks are going to release. Again, they're part of the official Lorwyn Eclipsed product line. And Lorwyn is a plane known for its creature types. You know, you got your fairies and your goblins, you got your Kithkin, you got your giants, you got your elementals, there's a bunch of important elves, there's a bunch of important creature types that are kind of specific to the plane of Lorwyn in a lot of ways. These 2 theme decks that are coming out with the set are Angels and Pirates. Question mark. I have no idea why this particular decision for these 2 particular creature types was made. It doesn't make any sense to me. It should be any of the creature types in Lorwyn Eclipse, but it's not. It's specifically none of those. So I don't know why, but again, I think theme decks are in general a good idea. And for what it's worth, they're going to be releasing theme decks with every in-universe set release this year. But there's also brand new cards to look at, which is probably why you're currently watching this video. There's like an 80% chance. So let's get to those. Now, I guess what I want to start the card reviews off with today is the transformable creatures that we've seen so far. And you might be thinking like, geez Louise, some more transformable creatures. They're in every set and they're always a million mana to transform. And that is not the case this time. I will say there's some interesting timing restrictions on when you can transform the creatures, but what we've seen so far from these creatures, they're all really cheap to transform, and both sides of them look somewhat playable. So let's start things off with Ashling, one of my favorite characters from Lorwyn. I like everyone from Lorwyn, but still, let's look at Ashling first. Now, the front face of Ashling Rekindled is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 1/3 legendary elemental sorcerer. Whenever this creature enters or transforms into Ashling Rekindled, the front face, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a blue mana. If you do, transform Ashling. If you do that, you get Ashling Rhymebound. This is a legendary elemental wizard. Whenever this creature transforms into Ashling Rhymebound and at the beginning of your first main phase, add 2 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to cast spells with mana value 4 or greater. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay red. If you do, transform Ashling. So at that point, it would transform back into Ashling Rekindled, and you get to discard a card and draw a card again. But I think the best part of this is pretty easily being able to transform it and get a couple of mana out of it. You know, you have to pump a mana into it, but it still nets you a mana when it transforms, meaning if you play this on turn 2, on turn 3, transform it, and you should be able to drop a 4-drop right then and there. But if you don't have a 4-drop in your hand, you just won't transform it. I imagine, you know, you wait until you have the 4-drop or the 5-drop and you can cast it or whatever it is. So this is actually pretty interesting. A creature that rummages on the front face, which can just get you deeper into your deck, fuel delirium, mayhem, flashback strategies, reanimation, whatever, and it's only a couple of mana. That's not so bad, and it can't die to like a dry Torch the Tower or a dry Burst Lightning or a dry Tragic Trajectory. You know, you have to boost all those spells in order to actually kill Ashling. I think that's kind of nice, but again, once you get it transformed, now you're generating mana. That's always really powerful on a, you know, efficient creature, so this isn't too bad. I guess the real question with Ash is it better than Fear of Missing Out? And most of the time, I honestly don't think that it will be, but if you have enough large stuff in your deck, it'll probably be worth the investment. Now, another transformable dude is Sygg Wanderwine Wisdom. Everybody loves Sygg, man. I bet the professor's into this card. This is 2 mana, 1 in a blue for the front face. It is a 2/2 legendary merfolk wizard that cannot be blocked. Whenever this creature enters or transforms into Sygg Wanderwine Wisdom, target creature gains. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card until end of turn. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a white mana. If you do, transform Sygg into Sygg Wanderbrine Shield. This is a 2/2 legendary merfolk rogue that also cannot be blocked. Whenever this creature transforms into Sygg Wanderbrine Shield, target creature you control gains protection from each color until your next turn. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay blue. If you do, transform Sygg. Then he becomes Wanderwine Wisdom again, and now you can target himself with his ability, because now he can attack, right? He's not summoning sick anymore. He's not blockable. He'll get in, draw a card, deal a couple of damage. I mean, this card's pretty efficient. Again, man, just a couple of mana for this deal is pretty all right. You know, I like a 2-mana 2/2 that cannot be blocked. Like, if it was a 2-mana 2/2 flyer, I'd be like, hey, a 2-mana 2/2 flyer. So, like, you know, can't be blocked is even better, I guess. And a lot of the time, every other turn, he'll draw you a card. He might draw you a card the turn he comes into play if you have another creature that's getting in for combat damage. And maybe turn 2, that's easy enough to make happen, you know. But on the other half, is an interesting call because you have to pay mana for this kind of proactive protection spell. I don't know how I feel about it. You know, you might be able to target one of your other creatures and not only protect it from removal and make it able to block your opponent's creatures until the next turn, but, you know, you can swing in with Sygg Wanderbrine Shield unblocked and also effectively whatever other creature that you know, gave the protection ability to, that can get in unblocked most of the time too. So, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Again, when you're transforming for only a single mana, that's reasonably efficient, and it's only a couple of mana to get on the table in the first place. So, I'm not sure exactly what standard deck this goes into. There's not a whole lot of like blue-white aggro decks right now, which is probably what this wants to be in, a kind of tempo aggro shell. So maybe we'll see the Dimir decks go Esper, but I don't know if they want to do that just to incorporate this card. Maybe the Pixie decks, because they're already Esper, but again, I don't think they need something like this necessarily. I don't think it really furthers their plan. So I don't really know where this goes right now, but if there is some sort of blue-white tempo deck, or maybe even a blue-white merfolk deck, right, then, you know, we can maybe get something cooking. But as it stands, it's just a powerful card in a vacuum that's kind of looking for a home, and it'll find one eventually, whether it's standard or commander. This looks like a pretty sick commander for what that's worth. You could brew around this, but again, I think that it might be efficient enough in standard to where it might be able to see some play. But there is one more transformable creature that we got to see today. By the way, how you digging this Lorwyn art in the background? Jeez, man, we saw some beautiful pieces from the new Lorwyn today. Seriously. Somebody on Twitter said that it feels like coming home, and I kind of felt that. It gets me all misty. But next we'll look at Eirdu, Carrier of Dawn. I don't get to say this one is efficient because it's 5 mana. I don't get to use that word anymore. 3 and double white for a 5/5 legendary elemental god with flying and lifelink. Creature spells you cast have Convoke. That's a good line of text. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a black mana. If you do, transform Eirdu into Isulu, Carrier of Twilight. This is a legendary creature. This is also an elemental god with 5/5 flying lifelink. Each other non-token creature you control, get a load of this, has persist. What? At the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a white mana if you do transform a Sulu. So, first of all, if you've never seen Persist before, it just gives all your creatures the ability to come back when they die if they didn't have a -1/-1 counter. So, basically, they'll come back with a -1/-1 counter on them. And some of your creatures might die again if they're X ones, but maybe you want that. Giving all of your non-token creatures Persist is a gross ability in like an Aristocrats deck or something where you're trying to sack all your guys, whatever it is. You know, it's pretty nasty. I like a lot about this. Again, mostly as a commander in this case. I think this is much more of a commander card, but that said, I will say you get this out in standard and it might be able to pay you the turn that you play it, because now your creature spells have Convoke. Even this can tap down for Convoke the turn you play it, because Convoke doesn't care about summoning sickness. So if you have a couple of creatures out and another creature in your hand, you might be able to like play a 2 or 3 drop after you drop this. And that counts as value, baby. And in the meantime, the between time, you got a 5/5 flying lifelink, kiddo. It's not too bad at all. And then if you ever flip it over, you still have a 5/5 flying lifelink. Just absolutely bonkers stats on this thing, man. I mean, 5 mana for a 5/5 flying lifelink is not anything super special. It's like Lyra Dawnbringer or something. But, you know, once it's on the table, smash your face in. That's all I'm going to say. And the other half of this is, wow, both half of this have like insane commander text on them. But again, once it's out in standard, these are definitely like impactful lines of text too. So there's another one. I can't really say where it goes. The Orzhov deck in standard right now is mostly Aristocrats or Raise the Past or whatever. And I just, even though that both of these look decent in a deck like that, I don't think standard Aristocrats is, well, Aristocats is sure, is playing a 5-drop right now. I just don't think they're really into that idea. So probably not quite good enough for those decks. But again, you want a fun commander to brew around, kid. This is the one. Now, before we move on to the Evoke creatures, which is maybe what I'm like most excited about in the cards we got to see today, we're going to look at what I consider to be some of the more normal quote-unquote cards from today, and that might surprise you considering what one of these is going to end up being. But that said, Morningtide's Light, and we'll start it off with that, is a pretty normal Magic card. It's 4 mana, 3 and a white for a sorcery. Exile any number of target creatures. At the beginning of the next end step, return those cards to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control. Okay. Until your next turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. Okay. And it's also, it also has to be exiled when you resolve it. So, okay. Again, I didn't mean to imply that these were 100% normal cards. These are just some of the most normal cards that we saw today. So it's kind of an interesting fog effect in Commander. You know, you get kind of a stasis coffin activation of sorts, I guess, when you play this. That's kind of nice. But you also get to blink all of your guys. If this was instant speed, it would be brutal. But considering it's sorcery speed, I think there are still a couple of ways you use it. You know, you can either blink all of your dudes and have them return to the battlefield at the beginning of your next end step, so it won't be too long. You repeat all their ETB triggers. Or maybe you target a bunch of your opponent's creatures, right? You go ahead and blink them out and then just swing in for combat damage, knowing that you won't have to worry about the crackback because, you know, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you on the next turn. This could be a really powerful card with some actually annoying play patterns in standard, but I just don't think that it's quite there in standard. But again, maybe in the like Pillow 40 Turbo Foggy decks that want to play a bunch of prison effects and stuff in Commander, this will go right in. Fit right in like a glove, baby. But again, in standard, I'm not like super convinced about this card, but it could be dangerous in the right shell. Now, the other normal quote-unquote card that we got today is honestly anything but. Really, this card is wild. This is Mutable Explorer right here. We actually got this from a leak a couple of days ago, but we couldn't be sure it was real. It turns out that it is. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 1/1 shapeshifter with Changeling. Yay, Changeling. So it's every creature type. That's all I really wanted out of Lurwin. We got it. When this creature enters, create a tapped Mutavault token. Let me read that again. When this creature enters, create a tapped Mutavault token. You just get a Mutavault. That's crazy. In case you've never seen Mutavault, you're brand new around here. This is a land that taps for a colorless mana, but you can also pay 1 and have it become a 2/2 creature with all the creature types until end of turn. A pretty not literally legendary in terms of subtypes, but a legendary card in Magic history, man. They printed Mutavault in the standard a few years ago, didn't they? And it was a very heavily played card again. Like the first time it was printed back in Lorwyn block, it was very heavily played. It was just a very cool land, especially if you care about creature types. But even if you don't, Mutavault can be fine to just ramp into play for 3 mana. I mean, this has to beat like Summon Fenrir and Clifftop Lookout and Springbloom Druid and Overlord of the Hauntwoods. We have a million creatures in standard that'll ramp you at least one. And in the case of Springbloom Druid, I guess it kind of gets you 2 lands, but I'm not sure that this beats all of those. But if you care about creature types, this guy gives you 2 things that are all creature types on 1 card and still ramps you for the 3 mana, which is kind of the going rate on a body anyway in standard. So I think in Commander, any deck that cares about creature types, including perhaps elves, might just play this as like another copy of Wood Elves or something like that. But most decks that care about creature types and have forests in them will probably run this dude in Commander. But in standard, I think it absolutely has a chance too, even with so much competition. If they're, again, just like Commander, it works in standard, I think, in this case too. If there's a deck with forest that cares about creature types, this bad boy is in, son. Just no questions asked. You come right, I don't care what shoes you're wearing. Come right into the club, man. Just, I think this thing is awesome. I will say, I think that maybe some people might be or again, like whatever noise I used to indicate anger. I think that some people might be a little about what feels kind of like an alchemy-ish, right? Like this feels a little bit like Conjure or whatever, but it still works in like paper game rules. I don't see why it shouldn't be able to exist. So I don't mind cards like this, even though I acknowledge that some people might. Now, the last quote unquote normal card, I guess, that we'll talk about today is one that I am really hype about. I think Ashling's Command is crazy, y'all. 5 mana. This is 5 mana, so keep that in mind. 3 a blue and a red for a Kindred instant. It is an elemental instant. Choose 2. Create a token that's a copy of target elemental you control. Or target player draws 2 cards. Or Ashling's Command deals 2 damage to each creature target player controls. Or create 2 treasure tokens target player. My God. Is this as wild to anybody else as it appears to be to me? I mean, look, I know it's 5 mana. It's 5 mana. You know, we can all kind of get past that, can't we? It's 5 mana. I think that any Jeskai control deck, or is it control or whatever, would want a copy of this card. Choose 2 of these, baby. I get to like Pyroclasm just your team, and I draw 2. That's insane. I get to make 2 treasures and draw 2, or again, like Clasm your team. That seems crazy. Copying an elemental we control might be really good, especially if it has a good ETB trigger, and a lot of elementals have Evoke. So they should have good ETB triggers, you know? So I don't know, dude. I think this card might be a serious beating, especially if you can copy a creature at instant speed. That could be good on your opponent's turn. In Commander, I guess it's kind of like, I kind of liken it, weirdly. I don't know if you're going to get this comparison. You're going to be like, is Dev crazy? I kind of liken this to like another copy of Unexpected Windfall or Big Score in like the Izzet decks that would want to play it, you know, Spellslinger decks and stuff like that. I think that it might even be worth the 5 mana in Commander because like you're getting paid 2 treasure tokens 90% of the time off this card. And being able to like, you know, Pyroclasm a team is crazy. So I don't know, man. I think that this might actually be good in multiple formats. 5 mana is quite the bar to entry in standard, don't get me wrong, but I think that when you're talking about instant speed, being able to do 2 of these things, you're going to blow a lot of people out if you ever get to this card, so I like it a lot. Oh wait, there is one more sort of normal card that I wanted to talk about. It's Figure of Fable. So this is supposed to be like a take on Hero of Destiny. If you've never heard of that, it's basically this card. I think this card might actually be in some ways better, especially if you get it to the final mode. This is either a green or a white mana to get down, so a Selesnya hybrid, we call that around here. It's a 1/1 Kithkin. Hello, Kithkin. They have weird heads. This is a creature that has a bunch of activated abilities that you can't activate unless you've already activated one of the abilities. So again, in case you've never seen a card like this, once it's in play, you can play either a green or a white mana and have this become a Kithkin Scalp with base PT 2/3. So you play it on turn 1, turn 2, make it a 2/3, swing in. Okay. You can also pay 3 mana. That's 1 and 2 Selesnya hybrids. If this creature is a scout, so if you've used its first ability, basically, it becomes a Kithkin Soldier with base power and toughness 4/5. And then if you pay 6 mana, 3 and triple Selesnya hybrid. If this creature is a soldier, it becomes a Kithkin Avatar with base power and toughness 7, 8, and protection from each of your opponents. That's wild. Protection from your opponents is kind of insane, man. Any spells they cast or creatures they control or whatever, this just has protection from. So it costs an awful lot of mana. What is it? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is that really 11 mana? Did I do that math right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It costs 11 mana in installments to get it to that final mode, and it'll probably die before then. So I just don't think this is a super standard playable card. I might be wrong. Maybe there's a bunch of Kithkin synergies, and this is always going to be your one drop in the Kithkin deck. That could end up happening, but for what it's worth, this is in some ways one of the weaker cards that I think we've seen today, but maybe some brave soul will do something cool with it. All right, 3 cards to go from the new Lorwyn stuff, and we got to look at the Evoke monsters now, dude. Again, these are some of the things I'm looking forward to the absolute most. I love Evoke as an ability, and it looks like we got some cool new stuff already. Here's Deceit to start things off. He's awesome looking, first of all, but he's 6 mana, sort of. 4 and then 2 Dimir hybrids for a 5/5 elemental incarnation. When it enters, if you spent double blue to cast it, return up to 1 other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. However, when it enters, if you paid double black for it, target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards that card. Note that these abilities will work one after the other, and the blue one hits first. So if you actually pay 6 mana for this, and 2 of it's blue and 2 of it's black, you'll be able to bounce something, and then maybe make them discard it, which is pretty cool. But you can also evoke this for 2 Dimir hybrids, right? So if you do evoke this, you probably want to pay either double blue or double black for it. I'll go ahead and warn you that one. But this is really, really gross, man. This is not as reanimatable as a lot of evoke creatures usually are. And I think that based on the couple of evoke cards we've seen so far, they are trying to cut down on the reanimatableness, I guess. If I'm telling you, I'm really good at English, of these creatures, because again, you reanimate this one, nothing really happens. You just get a 5/5, and I guess that could be fine some of the time, but if you blink it, you don't get anything. You just get a 5/5 if you blink it, but that could be worth it some of the time if you evoke it into play and then like splash portal it somehow at instant speed. Like that, I guess that could work, but either way, Evoke, basically, since it doesn't say this on the card, if you've never seen Evoke, you basically play it for the Evoke cost and then sacrifice it, like, immediately. I will say that maybe this sort of, like, instant speed blink strategy could work with something like this, because we already have, like, Warp in Standard, so we have a number of creatures you can play on the cheap and then blink the turn that they come into play, and now you got big guys, you know? And I think that Warp creatures work better, for the most part, than the creatures that we've seen with Evoke, but this is good, make no mistake, man. It may not look that incredible to a lot of folks at first glance, but guys like this are always great. You know, first of all, they're kind of modal. This one especially is modal because he can do a couple of different things when he comes into play, and sometimes he just does both. Just really, really powerful. There's no way to get him to do both when you evoke him, which I think is kind of really interesting design, right? But altogether, great card, in my opinion, man. But my vote for coolest new Lorwyn card of the day is the Orzhov card. No shocker there. I really like Orzhov. This is Emptiness right here. 6 mana, just like the last guy. 4 and 2 Orzhov hybrids, and just like the last guy, you can evoke him for 2 mana, in this case 2 Orzhov hybrids. He's a 3/5 elemental incarnation, and when he enters, if you pay double white for him, you return a creature with mana value 3 or less from your yard to the battlefield. And if you pay double black when you cast him, you put 3 -1/-1 counters on a creature. So that's wild. Again, you're not going to be able to reanimate or blink this for too much value because you're not paying mana for it when it comes into play. But I will also say that a removal spell on the one half and then like a kind of recommission or something like that on the other half, not too bad, man. This could take the place of cards like recommission in like the Azorius Oculus deck, and it doesn't even have to become an Esper Oculus deck. You know, you just play this card like it's a mono white card and you're fine. So I don't know, I like a lot about this, and I think the Orzhov, and for that matter the art, is doing a lot for me in that field. But I still think the card might be more than playable. With these evoke guys, you always have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I saved the absolute craziest for last. Here's Bitterbloom Bearer with incredible Rebecca Gay art. 2 black mana for a fairy rogue. This is a 1/1 flyer that also inexplicably has flash. Now, I get why it has flash. This is a Lorwyn fairy. Lorwyn fairies sometimes have flash. This, I guarantee you that there are going to be many times on stream where someone plays this card and I wonder aloud, why does it have flash? I am going to ask that question out loud dozens of times in the coming couple of years. This is a 2 black mana 1/1 flash flyer, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 blue and black fairy creature token with flying. Stop me if you've heard this one before. It's just Bitter Blossom on a stick. It's wild. With flash. So you just flash it in at the end of your opponent's turn and immediately untap and get the token out of it. Come on, bro. Why does it have flash? Why does this have flash? Like, was it just not good enough without flash? And you just, well, we'll make it have flash to be the best card in standard. This goes in the, probably not, but this goes in the blue-black, Dimir tempo deck. Day 1, no questions asked, perfect home, and that deck is already the 2nd or 3rd best deck in standard, behind Vivi and potentially mono red. So you're pumping up the power level of that deck even more, and I do think this goes in 100%. Despite the double black, I think this absolutely goes into that deck, and it goes into mono black for what it's worth. We might see mono black peel back a little bit from the Unholy Annex strategy, or we might not. You play this as your 2-drop regardless of whether or not you're trying to do Annex stuff. So just a wild guy. Even in just normal black decks, what you can do is play your 2nd swamp on turn 2 and then say go, and now you're holding up Shoot the Sheriff or Bitter Triumph, and also this. So like if they don't play a creature for you to hit with Shoot the Sheriff or something, or like a juicy enough threat, just play this. Heck, if they spend their mana to play a creature, do some threat assessment. If you don't need to shoot the sheriff right now, that's a weird sentence. If you don't need to cast a removal spell right now on that guy, well, all their mana's tied up. That means you're guaranteed to get a creature off of this dude. I like that idea too. So, I don't know, man. There's a lot of play patterns with this in current standard that I think are going to be just a headache to get around. Not to mention how well this goes with Kaito, right? Because on turn 2, now I have 2, or really on turn 3, right? You flash this in EOT on their turn 2. And now on my turn 3, I have 2 flyers to try to help Ninjutsu Kaito in. That's brutal. This card is absolutely insane. And if it stays in play for more than a few turns, it just starts winning the game, like actively. It's also good in like a Cecil deck because it's costing you life. Cecil? I say Cecil. This is America, where I am. Either way. I think that this goes great in a Cecil deck because it's, it's costing you life. It's getting you to 10 life a little faster. Maybe you throw the last ride in the deck. Whatever kind of fun you want to have, man. I think that this card is absolutely bananas, BANANAS, and I just don't know why it has flash. I will ask that question on my deathbed. Why does this card have flash? In any case, just like I wonder why Kaito has hexproof on their turn. Why did they make that? Why did they do that? It doesn't make any sense. And now Dimir gets another card that makes me ask why it has a keyword ability in the first place. But yeah, man, this is good. But hey, that's Alski Kowalski, is it not? I could have sworn that was Itsky Lewitsky. Oh yeah, they announced 6 other sets today, so I guess we got to talk a little bit about those. I should also tell you, while we're still on Lorwyn for a second, it's a really good plane. Let's stay on it as long as possible. They also announced there's going to be 2 commander decks for this, and they didn't show us the commanders yet, but we know that one is going to be Jund, and the other one is going to be, interestingly, 5 colors. So, don't know how they're going to pull that off. But 5-color commander decks are always like relatively popular when they do come out pre-constructed. So I imagine that one's going to be a good grab. But the next set they announced was nothing. They didn't announce, they said there's going to be a set, but they didn't tell us what it was. It's a Universes Beyond set, and it's really weird that we don't get to know what it is yet, because they announced 3 other Universes Beyond as part of this whole thing, and we get to know what they are, and they all come out after this one. So I don't know why we can't know what this one is. But they're going to reveal what it is on October 10th at New York Comic Con, so it won't be too much longer before we get to figure out what this is. Now, I think that it's kind of weird that they said there was going to be some sort of announcement of a Nickelodeon collab, and we haven't gotten that yet this weekend, at least. And so if we do get the Nickelodeon collab announcement this weekend at Magicon Atlanta, I imagine that it's going to be some sort of secret lair, Ren and Stimpy, Hey Arnold the set, or something like that. Something like that. But I'm still I got my heart set on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I know that not everyone's going to like that. You didn't like the Spider-Man set? You didn't vibe with that? Probably not going to be a big fan of the freaking Turtles set. We go back to New York again? Why? But still, I'm a big fan of the Turtles. And even though it's admittedly not the most Magic the Gathering thing in the world, I will pop like a mark in the crowd for this If it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I will go absolutely bonkers, and I can't help myself. I really like Donatello. So what am I supposed to do about that? You don't like Splinter? You don't like Casey Jones? Look, you probably do, but you're like, shouldn't be on Magic cards. And you might be right, ultimately, but I will still go absolutely crazy. I will mark out for the set if it's TMNT, so I've got my heart set on it. Don't disappoint me, Watsy. But I guess if it's just like a Doug's Secret Lair, I guess I'd be okay with that too. But, maybe they'll just swerve us all. It's like a Legends of the Hidden Temple set. That would actually feel more Magic the Gathering than like most Nickelodeon things they could do. But still, we'll see what this ends up being. We only have to wait a couple more weeks to figure it out. I'm over here pointing at nothing. I was doing this like half the time and there's nothing over here. I didn't put anything over here in editing, did I? I bet I didn't. It's apropos. There's nothing. We don't know yet. So we'll move on to the next announced set, which was Secrets of Strixhaven. Secrets of Strixhaven. Now, one thing I hadn't mentioned yet about the Lorwyn set, let's go back there. I really like Lorwyn, is that apparently the story is going to follow, and this is weird to me, 4 students from Strixhaven that are doing like a study abroad thing in Lorwyn, which, let me just say, I haven't read the story yet, but I don't know what the word I want to use is here, but it doesn't sound great. But I can't judge that yet. Again, I don't know the story. But I like Strixhaven and I like Lorwyn. And I like chocolate in my peanut butter sometimes. But there's other times I don't really want flavors mixed. And I get that maybe the Strixhaven students are in Lorwyn to set up the Strixhaven set. It's going to be part of a larger overarching plot line. I just don't think you always have to do that. I think you could have just Lorwyn's Lorwyn and Strixhaven's Strixhaven. I'm fine with that. But instead, there's going to be Strixhaven students for no reason on Lorwyn. And then we're going to catch up with them same students in the Strixhaven set. So like they're setting some kind of big story thing payoff up here. I'm not sure. I'm just happy to go back to Strixhaven. It is a plane that I think is really underrated and more people like as a setting than you might think. Not everyone was really in love with like the standard cards from Strixhaven, but a lot of Vorthos were in love with how this set presented a magic school and the different schools within it and the different color combinations. And do we get to do Magecraft again? That would be awesome. Like Strixhaven was a cool set with some cool ideas, and I kind of can't wait to go back there either. Now we know that Strixhaven releases in April, to the best of my knowledge. I think that's what they said. And we haven't seen a single card from it yet, but we do know there's going to be some sort of young adult novel coming out right before the set. And with that set, there's a promo command tower with the school on it. Don't you want that? I wonder how much that promo is going to end up being. That book will probably sell copies. That is a way to sell copies of a book. When I write my book, I will also include a free Magic card. That is a way to get on the bestseller list, baby. But either way, the command tower does look really cool. Now, in June, a couple months after the Strixhaven set, we get a set called Marvel Superheroes. And the only actual thing that I have written down from the product description here, because all we really got was the product description, is that this will be populated with, quote, characters from across the Marvel universe. So, not just Spider-Man. And not just like X-Men, but I don't know. I could probably vibe with this like slightly more than I did Spider-Man. Like at least it won't have like 30 different Spider-Men. I guess that'll be fine. And I will pop. I will pop a little bit. I will be a Rube. I will be a Mark for some things. You give me a Storm card, I'll be pretty happy about that. You give me a Jubilee card, I'll be kind of happy about that. I kind of like X-Men, but apart from that, there's a bunch of cool, Marvel guys, I guess. I don't know how I feel admitting this here on the channel, right? Because kind of a lot of crossover between this and the Marvel Universe, these two hobbies. But I don't know if I've seen an MCU movie. I don't. I haven't seen, Endgame or... I can't even name any of them, at this point, I don't remember the bylines for any of these movies, but in any case, I'm not that into the MCU, but I was a kid once. I like superheroes. So there's going to be some superheroes in this set that I'm going to be like, oh, it's that guy or that lady or whatever, oh, it's Sabretooth or that would be cool, I guess, it's Beast. Beast is awesome. Colossus, he will have the creature type Colossus. That's going to be dope. In any case, I guess that there's probably, 700 different people they can pull from for the set. And no matter how you feel about the set, there's probably going to be one or two people in here you're into. So I imagine this will do way better than Spider-Man, but we'll have to wait and see. Because at the end of the day, it still probably won't feel super Magic the Gathering, but I think they could probably pull it off better than Spider-Man. But if you wanted a Universes Beyond that does feel a little bit Magic the Gathering-y, then the next release after that's right, 2 Universes Beyond in a row, baby. It's going to be The Hobbit. It's going to be The Hobbit. They're doing a Hobbit. And we kind of knew that they would go back to the well on Lord of the Rings. It's not exactly an unexpected journey. Let's go. I'm sure everyone else has used that joke. In any case, first of all, I'm kind of excited for it. Again, not everyone loves UB, but I think a lot of people we've come to the conclusion that like Middle-earth Universes Beyond are kind of fine because it's kind of what Magic is based on in some ways. It's like some parts Arthurian legends, some parts Tolkien stuff, and you get Magic the Gathering. It's fantasy, baby. It's high fantasy, but because you have to be high to enjoy it. Sorry, I always have to do that joke. But in any case, I think a Hobbit set is dope. The Hobbit is one of my favorite books of all time. I'm very partial to Stephen King because I love trash, but I have read The Hobbit like 9 times. I have 2 different dog-eared copies of The Hobbit that have a bunch of like highlighters, scribbled things in the margin and stuff. I love The Hobbit. It is one of the books that I have, for lack of a better word, studied literally like more than any other text in my entire life. So I'm a Hobbit stan. I have read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I have, but I'm not a big fan of the like writing style. I like the Hobbit. It's easy. It's just easier to read. I'm sorry. I'm a big fan of this book. And for a long time, just the passage where, Bilbo defeats the spider was maybe my favorite passage in all of literature. And I like The Hobbit a lot, so I'm kind of excited about this, not to mention the fact that not only is it one of my favorite books to ever exist, but also comes out in August, which is my birthday month. I get to do a little Hobbit Magic birthday thing. That's going to be fun, so I honestly can't wait. I cannot wait for this set. And if you wanted an actual announcement having to do with this set that you might think is important, they've announced this set's going to be on MTG Arena. So we don't get the Marvel stuff on Arena, and God knows how they're going to fill out an entire set of Marvel superheroes with a Through the Omen Pass release. They'll have to figure that out themselves. But a Hobbit release coming to Arena, I'm kind of excited. I don't know how excited everyone else is going to be about it, but I am. Now, a couple months after we get the Hobbit set, in October, we're going to be getting a set called Reality Fracture, and they are being really cryptic about this one. Apparently, this set is going to mean a lot in terms of the story and blah-de-blah. This is going to be the last actual Magic the Gathering set, in-universe set, sorry, headphones users, that we get this year. And apparently it's going to be a pretty big one story-wise. I have written one thing down from the product description here because it's the entire, I've written down the entire product description. This is all we've gotten so far. Quote, years of subtle machinations will finally shatter the facade, revealing a villain you'll have to see to believe, but not just yet. More will be unveiled soon enough. So that, again, they're being weird about this one. So who knows? I think that the interesting thing about that is it's going to reveal a villain. It will shatter the facade and reveal a villain you have to see to believe. So my 2 guesses off the top of my head immediately are Lute. Lute is some kind of weird villain, demigod thing or just god thing. Or perhaps, and this would be stupid, don't do it, Kellen. Maybe it's Kellen for some reason. Because we've been following him for the last, 8 sets or whatever. There's always a Kellen card or something. So that'd be dumb. It shouldn't be Kellen. But I imagine it's going to be, a heel turn. It won't be like Nicol Bolas or so, it won't be like a big bad that we've already seen. And it probably won't be a heel turn you necessarily see coming. Like, oh, Liliana's bad again. She keeps turning face and heel. You know what I mean? She's like Shawn Michaels. But still, I think that this will probably be like the one you least suspect. And the one I guess the one I most suspect because of that is probably Lute. Like, we just learned that apparently Lute has a whole map of reality in his head, which is kind of interesting because this set is called Reality Fracture. So if Lute has a map of reality in his head and reality is going to fracture, and then You're going to shatter the facade. I'm just saying it's probably going to be loot. And then the final bit of information that we got today is that in November, now note that I said that last set comes out in October. Reality Fracture comes out in October. Going to be a big, huge story set in universe. Magic the Gathering. Something crazy is going to happen. Make room, son. And then the next month, like within 30 days, they're going to put out a Universes Beyond that's legal and standard, and also available on MTG Arena. So 2 UB sets on Arena, and I don't know if that's a thing you're going to be about or yay about, but I don't know. When it comes to this one, I'm a little more ambivalent because this Universes Beyond, and it's a big one, is Star Trek. This is one that a lot of people have like speculated on, myself included, for a long time. You know, they'll probably do Star Trek if they can't do Star Wars. Star Wars has its own card game right now. Star Wars is owned by Disney, which also has its own card game that it's pushing right now. So Star Wars is going to be a tough get, but I imagine it'll happen sometime in the future if enough money comes together. Money really makes the world go round, especially at Wizards of the Coast headquarters. But one way or the other, no matter what it takes, we will get Star Wars one day, mark my words. But we will get Star Trek first, which makes plenty of sense. And I can imagine a lot of people being absolutely gonzo over this. This is another one I imagine the professor's going to really like. He's a big Star Trek stan. But for what it's worth, as much as I love The Hobbit, I'm not a fan of Star Trek. I don't not like Star Trek. I don't really have that many feelings about it. My parents watched The Next Generation when I was growing up, but apart from that, I've only seen bits and pieces. I've never seen an entire episode of any Star Trek. And again, it's not because I don't like it. At this point, it's probably because like there's too much of it. It's like trying to get to watch like all of One Piece. You'll never watch all 20,000 episodes of One Piece, and you'll never watch all 20,000 episodes of Star Trek. Why would I do it? So I'm not going to start watching Doctor Who either. You know what I mean? So, like, I like some of Roddenberry's ideas when it comes to the world of Star Trek, and I like some of the characters, or at least what I know about them, but I've just never been a big Star Trek head. That said, I'm excited for other people when it comes to this set. I think it's important to do that sometimes. You know, not every Universes Beyond is for you. And Spider-Man came out, and I was like, I'm not a big Spider-Man guy, but I imagine some people will be into this. And then my LGS, I've heard a lot about LGSs, like didn't really fire for Spider-Man pre-release and blah, blah, blah. But my LGS, or at least one of the 3 LGSs around here, posted a bunch of pictures where there's like, they set up webs all over the ceiling and there's little Spider-Man plushes all over the webs. And there's like a couple hundred people at freaking pre-release. Like pre-release was stacked for the Spider-Man set at my LGS at least. So I don't know how it worked at yours. There were people excited about Spider-Man, and I was excited for them, and I'm excited for Star Trek, or at least I'm excited for people who like it, who like the idea. So this could be Magic the Gathering. You know, they've already proven that they can do space stuff with Edge of Eternities. We all kind of doubted them on that one. And I'm over here like, look, as long as it's not Spaceballs, and it's like, you know, Ridley Scott's Alien or something, I'll be into that. And it was, at the end of the day, a little bit more Ridley Scott's Alien than it was Spaceballs. And I think that really aided that set. There's a mystique to Edge of Eternities, and I think that they can probably honor that same sort of, you know, mystique that Star Trek has behind it, while still allowing themselves to be a little goofy, because Star Trek allows itself to be goofy sometimes too. So I don't know. It's probably going to be a good set, and if they pour the same amount of tender love and care into it that they did the Final Fantasy set and the Lord of the Rings stuff, and they probably will, then this is probably going to end up being a great set. So we'll have to wait and see. It's a whole year plus out at this point, but it's one I imagine a lot of people are going to be like crazy hype over, and I can see why. But that, my friends, is now officially Allski Kowalski and Itsky Lewitsky. So just get down there in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about all this. Not just the Lorwyn cards, but I am excited about those. But how do you feel about these UBs that are coming out? The Hobbit is one. I'm excited for that one. But I especially want to know how you feel about Star Trek, and for that matter, Marvel superheroes. You know, do you think it'll be different than Spider-Man in terms of the vibe that you get from it, your ability to, like, you know, want to actually play with those cards? Are you excited for Marvel superheroes? But you know, there's a lot to talk about today. Are you excited to go back to Strixhaven? You know, I kind of really want to get like a barometer on what everybody feels about these announcements today, because I've seen a lot of people, you know, geeking out over like the Lorwyn art and Lorwyn stuff and all that, but I just haven't seen that much about any of the other announcements today. So kind of, again, want to, like, you know, just throw the dipstick in for a second, pull it out and see where you guys are in terms of lubrication. That's what a dipstick shows. Either way, just let me know down there in the comment section how you feel about the stuff You can even rage about the MSRP increase. You will. I know you will. You should. Why are they doing that? It's stupid. They're making money hand over fist. Why are you doing that? I hate you. Anyway, I shouldn't even say that. I still have a healthy appreciation for Magic the Gathering. And a few of these products coming out next year. Products, terrible word. But that's what they are. Do really excite me. So just hit me up in the comments section. Let me know how you feel. And apart from that, do all the YouTube stuff. Hit the button shaped like a thumb. You can subscribe. I think that's right. Yeah, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 150K. We're relatively close. I think we're like 12K away. But if everyone watching this video that's not currently subscribed right now, we have like a couple thousand more subscribers. So I guess do that if you feel like it. We also have a Patreon that really supports the channel. Right now, especially with views down across the board for everybody on YouTube, kind of worried a little bit. So hit me up on the Patreon if you want to support the channel. It's only $1 a month to do it. You get to vote on what deck techs we do all throughout every season. When these sets come out, you get to vote on Star Trek decks. It's dope. But anyway, y'all, just do all the stuff if you got time for it. And I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.